A gremlin is a monster that originates from the RAF, or the Royal Air Force pilots in the 1920s. The first printed mention of it was in a poem published in a journal called Aeroplane on April 10, 1929 in Malta, which consists of 2 islands found in Europe, just south of Italy. It was said to have been a small humanoid creature that would interfere with the machinery inside military aircraft and other ground vehicles. Their description ranged from them having spiky backs, claws, large eyes, and sharp teeth. There is an explanation of how the name and the idea of the gremlin began among the RAF pilots. In her book, Spirits, Fairies, Leprechauns, and Goblins, an Encyclopedia, Carol Rose attributes that the creature came from a combination of Grimm's fairy tales and the folklore surrounding Frimlin's brewery, which was established in Maidstone, Kent, England. The beer was actually a favorite among the pilots in the 1920s. It was as early as 1865 that the company tradition included the existence of a fabled unseen house spirit named Robin Hodfellow. Robin was said to be a beer soul, which was a type of kobold or a house spirit that protected beer cellars and their contents. He would ride a small elephant, or sometimes was described to be a small elephant himself, as he took care of the machinery inside the brewery as long as he was paid in beer. However, he grew mischievous if he was not compensated. Brewery workers would leave offerings of beer to satisfy Robin, and this tradition lasted into the late 20th century in pubs located in Maidstone and Canterbury. Roald Dahl, an author who had carried out 7 years of service in the Royal Air Force himself, is credited for the gremlin myth gaining recognition in the United States and other areas. He had experienced his first accidental crash in the Middle East, and when he was transferred to Washington, D.C. in January 1942, he wrote his first children's novel, The Gremlins. It featured tiny men living on RAF fighters causing mischief as revenge for their forested homes being destroyed to make way for an aircraft factory. Also, Dahl called the wives of gremlins Fifinellas, their male children Widgets, and their female children Flibberty Gibbets. After Roald showed the first manuscript to Sidney Bernstein, the head of the British Information Service, Sidney got the idea to send it to Walt Disney. Walt Disney received it in July 1942 and offered Dahl a film contract and also published the story in Cosmopolitan magazine in December. In 1943, at Dahl's request, the revised version of the story was published in a picture book by Random House. The plans for the film were eventually cancelled due to copyrights not being resolved. However, the story had gotten widespread recognition. The story was published again in 2006 by Dark Horse Comics. The gremlin is one of the most memorable creatures from the Twilight Zone series that appears in an episode called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which aired on October 11th, 1963. William Shatner plays the role of Robert Wilson, who throughout the episode keeps warning people about the gremlin he sees on the wing of the airplane, yet nobody believes him. This episode was remade as a segment in Twilight Zone, the movie, in 1983, and it starred John Lithgow in the same role, but as a different character named John Valentine. One of the main differences between the two projects is the gremlin itself. In the Shatner version, the gremlin looked like an ape with curly fur, dark outlining around its eyes, and exaggerated lips. In the Lithgow version, the gremlin takes on a more menacing reptilian look with quills draping down its back, claws on its hands, large eyes, and fangs. In 1984, Gremlins was released. It was directed by Joe Dante, who had been one of the 4 directors from the Twilight Zone movie from the year prior. In this film, gremlins are created from a creature known as a mogwai if it is fed after midnight. Gizmo, the first mogwai that appears in the film, is friendly but comes into contact with water which causes him to multiply. These duplicates are mischievous and are accidentally fed after midnight and end up turning into the titular monster, a more sinister reptilian incarnation. There is a short scene where one of the characters talks about some of the original aviation folklore about gremlins, only to be attacked by them later in the film. In 1990, the sequel was released along with the return of Gizmo and the original main cast. It features more extreme variations of the monster.